interesting, and maybe some would call it ironic, because a 2020 presidential candidate, hopeful Joe Biden, is looking for a middle ground policy to battle climate change. So looking for a middle ground policy to battle an emergency. But it's not my plan.
Brooke, I love the way you framed it. Before we get into the details, I hadn't thought of it that way, right? So I've got different thoughts on what kind of a middle ground it is. But I like the idea of like, oh my God, there's a fire in the house. Well, let's go with the middle ground approach. Can we just put out? Yeah, that's right. Can we just put out half the fire? Okay, so we'll let half the house burn down and put out the other half. No, sometimes the middle ground approach does work. It depends on the situation.
Okay, never works in an emergency.
Yes, but hardly ever in an emergency, right? Hey, we're getting robbed here. Let's go with the middle ground approach. Let them take half your money, or send in, it's you get the point. And the planet is in crisis. And if you don't recognize that, there is a significant issue there. I have a theory on where the real middle ground is, but let's give you more of the details.
Yeah, so I'll give you some details. Let's take a look. So the background of the policy will likely include rejoining the United States with the Paris Climate Agreement and preserving US regulations on emissions and vehicle fuel efficiency that Trump, of course, has sought to undo. According to one of the sources, there are two sources that are giving us this information, but Heather Zekal is actually part of a team advising Biden on climate change, and she previously advised President Barack Obama. So this sounds good, right? This sounds good. Here's where a lot of people have a problem. The second source, a former Energy Department official also advising Biden's campaign, who asked not to be named. That's always a red flag.
Yeah, that's right, totally. Yeah.
They say
whatever you do not tell people who I am.
Exactly.
Okay.
So they say the policy could also be supportive of nuclear energy and fossil fuel options like natural gas and carbon capture technology, which limit emissions from coal plants and other industrial facilities. And so, of course, this is likely to upset climate change activists, environmental groups. More than half of the crowded field, of course, of Democratic contenders, including Elizabeth Warren, Kamala Harris, Beto O'Rourke, Cory Booker, Jay Inslee, and Pete Buttigieg, have backed the Green New Deal. And many have also called for a moratorium on drilling on federal land. But back to the first source, Zekal said, here's the deal, that Biden hopes to be able to use his climate policy to bridge the gap between younger and more progressive Democrats who want bold action on global warming and the working class demographic that fear losing jobs as the economy shifts away from fossil fuels. So essentially, people are saying that he is already starting with the fight for Trump, like almost like he feels like he has the Democratic fight just in the bag already.
Yeah, I don't accept that paradigm at all. Let me just make a quick point, and then I want to hear you out, and then get back to the middle ground. So Reuters wrote this article, and they're a pretty good organization. They're, I would argue, even better than most of the rest of the journalism done in America. But they say this repeatedly throughout the piece. I'll quote another sentence here. Biden's middle ground approach to environmental policy could put him in a better position than his rivals to take on Trump if it accommodates blue collar voters. I don't agree with the assumption. In another part of the piece, another mainstream media assumption is that, well, this will cost trillions of dollars. Well, you're leaving out the part where it saves trillions of dollars from all the economic disasters that we have had through floods, fires, hurricanes, extreme weather events. That part of the equation is almost never mentioned in the media or by corporate Democrats. But more importantly in that context, wait, if we're spending trillions of dollars, did it ever occur to you that's because we're rebuilding the entire energy infrastructure of America and hence creating tons of jobs? So it's not either or, it's not, hey, we're gonna save the planet, but sacrifice blue collar jobs. No, we're gonna save the planet and in so doing create potentially millions of new jobs. So I do not accept your corporate ideology that no, you can either have the planet or you can have jobs. That's the oldest corporate myth there is. And so for Biden to buy into it, and even more disturbingly, for good media organizations to buy into it is unacceptable.
I think you, just an interesting point, it just reminded me, it's something that I keep complaining about and I forgot to complain, what? But you pointed out that this is still another hidden way of still assuming that all of those people voted for Trump because of economic anxiety.
Exactly.
So that was it. They're screaming, shoot migrants at rallies because of economic anxiety. And so if you're soft on climate change, they'll like you because they want fossil fuel jobs. That's really what this was all about. It just ignores this aspect and this reason why Trump voters are Trump voters that people still are not fully willing to accept. I don't think it was so much about this.
Yeah, so it's a lose-lose in both of those respects. I mean, to go to a totally non-economic issue like Black Lives Matter, when right-wingers who support Trump say that that's a terrorist organization, as they have said on Fox News, well, that has nothing to do with economic issues. What in God's green earth are you talking about, right? So that's part of it. The other part is, well, even if you were to accept this because of economic issues, Green New Deal creates millions of new jobs, thereby giving you an opportunity to reach out to those voters in a much more effective way than let's maintain the status quo, because that appears to be Joe Biden's theme, just like it was Hillary Clinton's theme. Let's make sure we go back to doing pretty much nothing. So look, on the good things, Paris Climate Accord, and look at the wording, preserving US regulations on emissions and vehicle fuel efficiency. That's table stakes. That's saying, hey, let's go back to 2016. That's not gonna solve the climate change issue. Those are good steps, but minor steps taken in an earlier time. For you to put us back to 2016 creates two different problems. One is, then we have not gone forward in fixing the climate crisis that we have on our hands now, and we can't afford to lose any time. And second of all, you created a political environment that was so bad, so toxic, it created Donald Trump. No deal.
So for me, this is an example of what happens far too often in our country, which is you compromise before you even have an opportunity to negotiate, which means to me, what Biden is expressing here is not a statement actually of his values, but the fact that he's actually tethered quite likely to corporate money. I mean, as we see literally in the story with the natural gas industry insider as one of his advisors. The Paris Accord is largely non-binding. It doesn't go nearly far enough. Most climate scientists and journalists like Naomi Klein have made that point again and again. And on top of it, what happens here is there's an objectifying of blue collar workers and their economic anxiety. What people want are jobs and a social contract. They want secure income for their families and to be able to work to get what they want, out of that work. They need to be protected as we go through these transitions. The Green New Deal isn't about leaving these people behind. It's about giving them meaningful employment in an industry of the future. And it's really important that as we go through these transitions, and this is something that Bernie Sanders has said very directly, that we don't leave anyone behind. We should create more economic opportunities out of the challenges that we're facing right now.
So I've got to run through two more things here at least. One is I promised you what I think middle ground actually means. I think middle ground in this case means middle ground between the planet and my corporate donors. So let's be honest and let's have a conversation we didn't have in 2016. We said it on air, but almost no one on TV said it. In fact, they asked Bernie Sanders in a very skeptical and demeaning way, like, are you saying that Hillary Clinton's donors affected her policy? God damn it, yes, the answer is yes. Are they affecting Biden's policies? Of course they are. That's why he's going with a so-called middle ground. And
they affected Obama's policies.
They did, and that's an uncomfortable fact. And Biden loves to hide behind Obama. He's like, I'm gonna do nothing, but so did Obama, right? I'm gonna go back to the status quo, but so did Obama, right? And so, hey, if you attack me, you're attacking Obama, and you're not allowed to do that. Wrong, I am allowed to do that. And we have to be honest with people. And remember, it's a different time. If Obama was ahead of his time, which I don't think he was, but even if you were to grant him that, that still doesn't get you to today. You have to go forward. You can't go backward and hide behind Obama. And so now, speaking of going backwards, I mean, look at this policies, right? It smacks of Hillary Clinton. So here's a quote. Tell me if Biden said it or Hillary said it. Right now, to be fair, neither one of them said it's one of their advisors. Anyway, right now, we need a little bit more reality around this dialogue. Remember when Hillary would say, oh, let's be real. Let's be real, we're not gonna help you, okay? The reality is there isn't anything we can do and the status quo rocks. How did that work out for us in the general election? And Biden constantly reaching out to Republicans, not interested, it misunderstands the political dynamic at hand. One of his advisors is Obama's Energy Secretary, Ernest Moniz. And you might think, oh, hey, Obama, I'm hiding behind Obama, wonderful. Obama's Energy Secretary. Just wrote an op-ed in March with a Bush administration official calling for a green real deal, meaning, no, let's keep it real. We're not going to do anything. Me and the Bush guys agree. No, in that case, I'm not for a real deal. I'm for a no deal. No deal on Joe Biden. So it's not personal. I like Joe Biden. He's a likable guy. I met him a couple of times. It's not like he's my uncle. He seems like a fine enough guy. It's not personal at all. But if your policy planks are, I promise to march backwards and at best maintain the status quo, and I promise to work with Republicans like Dick Cheney, who he complimented, Mitch McConnell, and the others. No deal, not interesting. So right now he's got the do nothing Biden campaign, and that's how we lost the general election last time.
Can I make one quick point, which is this is reflective of not having any vision at all, right? I mean, Trump was clear about his hateful and hypocritical vision. Bernie Sanders was clear about his vision in the last go around. What is Biden's vision? Is it to soothe everyone while the climate crisis gets worse, while people become more economically insecure? What is the vision?
Yeah.
And if you don't have a vision, you lose.
And so to that point, Ramesh, he says, well, I call it climate change an existential crisis, an existential threat to our planet. So first of all, let me know that I don't care what you call it, I care what you do. Second of all, if you think it's an existential threat, that means it is life or death. To Brooke's original point, would you go with a middle ground approach to an existential threat? No, that means you don't mean any of it. You don't think it's an existential threat. You're not going to act like it's an existential threat. The only thing that you view to be an existential threat is if your corporate donors back out of your campaign. That's the reality. That's the real deal. The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.